Hi, in this video we are going to look at the advanced waveform. In the previous videos we have looked at the modules separately. We have been looking at all of the basic waveforms. We have been looking at all of the phase converters. And we have been looking at all of the value converters. In this video we are going to look at the advanced waveform as a whole. And just to repeat, for every single value we extract from the waveform, we begin with an input phase in the range from 0 to 360 degrees. That value is passed through 3 phase converters that might change the phase. Then that changed phase is inserted into the waveform algorithm. And based on that phase value, it will calculate a value in the range from -1 to +1. And that value passes through 3 value converters before it's being output and being used to draw the waveform. So let's have a look at it in the software. Here at the top we have the waveform because it's the most important thing. I could have chosen to put the value converters in the top to indicate that their function is performed before the waveform, but again, the waveform is the most important thing, so I placed it in the top. And we can choose a waveform. We can add multiple phase converters. For example, we can choose to compress, and we can choose to put a frequency multiplier. When you have multiple converters, their order might be important. It depends what they do. In this case, if I right-click, I can choose to swap these two. And in this case, we get a different result. Likewise, we can add multiple value converters. For example, we can invert, or we can add peak grabber, and then you can continue adding what you need, or you can choose if I had used all 3 of these, for example adding in this case it's already a 0, it does nothing, but imagine it did something else. What we can do is I can convert this to a hand-drawn waveform. And doing so, all the effects of all of the phase and the value converters will be applied to that hand-drawn. So you see they're now removed, and if I choose to edit, this is how the hand-drawn waveform looks like. So you can simply choose to add more phase converters and value converters if you need to. A feature I used a lot in the beginning while developing the software was the randomizer. Every time you hit random, it will randomly choose a waveform and its variants, and it will choose 1 or more phase converters or 1 or more value converters and set them with different values. So you can press the randomizer. In many cases, it will generate some garbage waveform you cannot use for much. But for example, this one could be useful, and so on. And many times I would not look at this part. I would simply look at the waveform and try to see if I could work out in my head which basic waveform was used, which phase converters and which value converters was used to generate this outcome. And it's a great way to teach yourself the effect of those converters, because every time you guess wrong, you might just have learned a new way to accomplish something. So I suggest you spend some time and either make waveforms yourself or using this randomizer, and as I said, try to guess what's going on. Let's shift to my personal database. And if I expand it, and I scroll to the top. These blue ones are the advanced waveforms. And as you can see, we have the green, those are the partials, and we have the orange, and those are the compound. And while I scroll through this database, you'll see that by far most of these almost 26,000 waveforms are made as advanced waveforms. Here there is a few compound. And here we have some partials. But as I said, by far most of them are made as advanced waveform. So even though when you make a waveform, you have these three complexities of waveform, where the advanced is the most basic of these three, it can do a lot of things still. Let's collapse it. I have this folder called random, and all of the waveforms in this folder are handpicked, randomly generated, as I showed you before. And when you look at this waveform, you will see here in the info field, you can see which basic waveform was used to make it. But it will not show which value converters and phase converters were in use. This one, for me, it appears to be exponential phase converter that have pushed this waveform to the right. You see here on the left side, this change from here to here is a lot wider than the change from here to here. So if we double click, we can see it is indeed exponential. Also, a peak wrapper is in use. So the volume has raised, and that's the reason that this part is bending down and this part is bending up. You can see if we either reduce them or enlarge them, or simply remove the effects. Next, go through some more. For example, this one. I recognize this pattern being from the jitter ramp waveform, but just looking at it, I'm not sure how this part is made. But looking up here, I can see that it had probably started as a jitter, but at some point it was transferred into a hand-drawn waveform. So you see we have this mirror invert, and that's what we have this part, and it's mirrored up here. And if we remove it, we will have this waveform. As I said, this one probably started its life as a jitter ramp, but at some point it was changed into a hand-drawn. And we can try to see if we can generate this ourselves. As I said, we start as a jitter ramp, and it will be an up-down, and it will be probably it was this ellipsoid. And then we need to push it down, and the way we can do that is using the DC offset. Like this. And it was probably turned into a hand-drawn. And we edit that. And we can add a line from, I don't know if it's correct peak, but let's say it's from this peak to this peak. And say OK. And then we had that pi mirror invert. And you see it assembles this one. So that's one way you could choose to create a waveform. Let's look at some more. This one, we can see it's a random linear. I would have guessed that anyway. but you can see all the peaks are here in the top part. They're not continuing down. So I'm guessing that we have the force sine value converter in use that would force all these values to be positive and all these to be negative. So let's have a look. We have the force sine. And then we have these two pi expanders, one set to expand and one set to reduce. So that's why you see a difference in their width. Let's look at some more. This one, for me, it's easy to see what's going on. This is clearly the segments. The segment swap, that's swapping odd even segments. It's splitting up in odd and even segments. We get this. And then we have something that's affecting the phase also, because these peaks are more narrow in this side, and then this side. It could be a pulse width modification, but I'm not sure. No, it was the exponential. Also, we have the mid shift. That's probably what producing these curved parts. And also we have a sample and hold, but it's a very low value. So you can see these small steps, but it's not contributing a lot. You see, when I remove it, it did not change the waveform very much. Let's remove the shift, mid shift. And indeed, that was what now we have more straight lines than the curves we saw before. Also, we have this exponential that pushed the phase. And last, we have the segment swap. So it's simply a triangle. So we got from this waveform to this waveform. Looking at this one, we can see it's a random sample and hold. And I think the volume has been reduced. It seems to have been reduced as much in the bottom as in the top. So it's probably just a volume change. It's probably not a DC shift. Perhaps it's made like with an pi invert, because this last part looks like a mirrored and flipped version of the first part. So let's have a look. Indeed, there is a DC offset, but it's a very little value, so it's probably not doing anything, just a little. And then we have this half pi mirror invert. I guessed it to be a pi mirror invert, but I should have seen that this segment here, these 90 degrees are a perfect mirror of these 90 degrees. And so we're only using this part of the waveform, and then we copy it to here, and then copy all of it to here. And then we also have this expand contract. It was not doing much, but still. So again, we got from this one to this one. This one, for me, it's easy to see that this is ellipsoid, and this is the peak wrapper. Volume has been increased by the peak wrapper and then wrapped down here and wrapped up here. And we have a smaller size in the left than in the right. It could be exponential, but I'm guessing here that it's pulse width modification. So the peak wrapper and the pulse width modification, and then we just have this ellipsoid. let's look at something different. This one, I'm not sure what's going on here. We can see it's a saw down, and since we only have these two peaks here, I'm guessing it's a saw down with very few harmonics. And from here to here, it seems to me to be simply an S-curve interpolation that we threw out whatever was in the waveform, and then we just added this S-curve interpolation. I'm not sure there's any change otherwise to the phase. No phase change at all. We have this pi mirror invert. Instead of interpolation, it was a mirror invert, and we have this fade in, fade out. So that's what's make the beginning end look differently. So again, from this to this. This one is random harmonic. It's probably random harmonics with a lot of steps. I'm not sure there's anything else going on. We have a little analogous effect. It doesn't contribute a lot. We have this expand contract. Also just did a little thing. And then we have this mirror invert. But in this case, it did not do much. This one, it's noise finnable, it's easy to see, but you have some steps that are wider than others. You have a left side and a right side that appears to be... No, they're not mirrored because you have something else going on than here. So we have something manipulating the phase that makes this step wider. And it's this half pi expander that does the trick. We even have some random noise. It doesn't do much, and we have this exponential. It did a little, but not much. So again, from this to this. This one, random linear, it appears to me that we probably have some fade in, fade out, perhaps. I'm not sure. No, we had this half pi and a half pi expander. This one, I'm guessing, will be the half pi expander as well, since the area around 90 degrees and 270 degrees seems to be pushed further to the left and to the right. So let's have a look. Indeed, the half pi expander. And now we see clearly that we have the peak wrapper here. We have an exponential value converter. And we have this pi fade in, fade out. So again, we went from this waveform to this waveform. Yeah, we have the analogous is probably not doing much. A little it will do. We have a force sign. That force sign with this pi mirror invert did the trick, and then we have inverted the phase also. So we went from this one to this one. This one, it's the ramp jitter. And I'm guessing normally it will be here in the top, so perhaps we have... it could be something as simple as a force sign, where we force the first half part to be negative and the last half to be positive. It could also be a pi invert, or actually also half pi invert, with some kind of inverter that makes sure the first part is in the negative range and the last in the positive. But I'm guessing it's simply a force sign, and indeed it was. And then we even shifted it, but in this case, shifting it or not would not do much to it. This one again, we see it's the sub saw, and we can clearly see that the segment swap is in use. As we increase the segments, these steps will be smaller, or decrease them, they'll be larger. And we have this inverter. This one is a square, and we don't see the asterisk, so we don't have a soft clip, so I'm guessing the hard clip. No, I don't think. No, it's a square. I don't think it's a hard clip. I'm guessing we have a fade in, fade out that produces this part. And this part, it could be a linear interpolation, or one of the other one, simply a pi fade in. It could also have been the linear interpolation. So it's not a lot of change. Actually, we had a volume also. Not a lot of change that have made to this waveform. We started with this one and got this one, but as I hope you are seeing now, it's very it's very powerful what you can do using these different phase and value converters. So even though the program have relative few waveforms, I know some of these with the value converters, the variants, you can do a lot of things. And also if you dial in one of these other ones where you can do many things, that even though they're relative few, you can actually generate a lot of waveforms just by using the basic waveform without using the phase converter and the value converters. But combining the feature of the basic waveform, the 3 phase converters and the 3 value converters, you can do a lot of things. And if when you feel you hit a wall, you can always resample it into a hand-drawn and do whatever you want to change. If you want to have an S-curve in this part, or you want to add noise, or if you have something more complex that you want to smooth into something else, and so on. You can do a lot of things. I could go through the rest here, but I think it's more important for you to spend some time yourself playing with the program, see what you can come up with. And as I said in this in the beginning of this video, the randomizer is a good way to learn. Simply looking at the waveform and not looking over here and try to guess what's going on is a good way to learn what these actually are doing. And also, for example, here I clearly see we have sample and hold here, but it's not so obvious over here. It's probably due to this pulse width that had compressed this side. So here you see now, you can clearly see we have that sample and hold in both sides. And also here, this shape for me is, I spotted very quickly that it's the peak wrapper in use. Here you can see that the peak wrapper have got to this point, and then it starts to go again in the next direction. So I know a value have been dialed in here. I can dial that further in the top or let it go further down. But again, I wish you good luck and play with the software. Thank you.